Hello everybody and welcome back to another Sai Knows the Score video where I am a massive tit because I recorded the video yesterday in a hurry before work and I recorded it with no sound where I usually test it before to make sure everything's going. What a numpty. So look, I'm obviously a day and a bit behind now, so I do apologise in advance. And of course, being a smaller content creator, what that actually does mean is that it's now going to go out with the bigger content creators, so the video probably won't be seen as much, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So there's no point crying over spilt milk, is there? But if you could do me a favour though, and drop me a like and subscribe, it really does help, because my whole ambition for doing this channel is that we can grow it and get it to a point where we're able to do videos consistently, hopefully get it to a point where we can bring other content creators onto the channel, and but of course that does mean I have to be a bit bigger myself, so of course this is a passion of mine. I thoroughly enjoy it and I'll keep doing it regardless of what happens with the channel, just so you know. It's just, of course, I want to be the best that I can be for this channel and for yourselves as well. So yeah, that's enough of that. If you could, again, please like and subscribe, and now we'll get into Game Week 17 rather than listen to me rambling about my schoolboy errors. So kicking off Game Week 17 is quite a decent match, we could say, Newcastle versus Chelsea, where, look, it's not really going smoothly, is it, for Eddie Howe and Newcastle at the moment, and they're just, I mean, look, it'd be really disappointed for how poor they actually were in that time with Derby. Surely they'll put out a better performance here, back on home soil. However, when we do look at Chelsea, they've been inconsistent recently, even though they actually sit second in the away table, funnily enough behind Crystal Palace of all teams. So no doubt Chelsea will rotate, or did actually rotate quite a bit for their Carabao Cup game to Cardiff, so they did literally put a second string team out, but then they did actually bring some first team players on, but I can't see the half an hour they had really having too much of an impact, so I think they'll be golden for this one. And yeah, this is recorded before the Wednesday night fixtures, so I'm not sure how Newcastle will line up against Fulham. So with this, all things considered, I would say the Newcastle-Fulham game will be more impactful, of course, than the Chelsea one. So I'm going to go here quite entertaining 2-2 draw at St James's Park. Bringing us on to Bournemouth versus Burnley, and Bournemouth, wow, I'm mixing the teams together now, nice little football cocktail. And also Bournemouth had a cracker of a game at Old Trafford on Monday night, didn't they, with that 4-4 thriller. So I thought there would be goals. I went 5 goals actually, with 3-2 Manchester United. Didn't see 8 goals though, fair play. There was a lot of goals there, because they usually are in that particular fixture. I mean, look, regardless of how Man United have been over the years, a point Old Trafford, mainly, especially given Bournemouth's recent form, must be considered probably a valuable one. So, you know, when we look at the form now for Bournemouth, they're actually 7 without a win, and have slipped down to 13, so something to maybe bear in mind here. I mean, as mentioned last week with Burnley, where does their next win come? I mean, they were the better team against Fulham, where Fulham were very clinical, but Burnley just lack that quality, don't they, at both ends of the pitch, and so they'll have to spend upwards of probably 70-80 million really in January, and I don't even know if they have the room for that unless they're selling a host of players. And I mean, can they just get rid of, you know, players like Brozier, for example, straight away, because he's been pretty dreadful for them. So yeah, unless they're spending upwards of 70-80 million in the January transfer window, they've got, in my opinion, very little to no chance of staying up. So, you know, even though Bournemouth haven't been good of late, they do score goals and Burnley concede them. So I'm going to go 3 for Bournemouth and a solitary 1 goal for Burnley, as Bournemouth tend to concede a goal too. Brighton versus Sunderland, and there's no cup action here for either team, so they'll both be fresh as a daisy, where Brighton will have I'd imagine have the lion's share of possession, and I can see them peppering shots at that Sunderland goal. The question is, will they be good quality chances or just pot shots from the edge of the box? You know, Sunderland will be on a high after beating their closest rivals in what was a really poor game for the neutral. Not that Sunderland will, of course, care, but surely they'll be going 5 at the back here, with them looking to counter like they have done. I think they've done that basically all season away from home. Now, Brighton will be without Belieber, and Sunderland will be without quite a few players, including Sadiq, Renildo, Talbi, and others. So are one of the most affected by AFCON in the Premiership, if not the most. Now, I know from a Sunderland perspective, from what I've been seeing, the right back Ronaldo is probably going to be the biggest miss with Siddiqui in second. I get that, of course, because you do have reasonable options, don't you, as well in midfield to replace. Maybe if Diarra can get back fit too, then we might not even miss him whatsoever. But this could be the toughest match of the week for me to actually predict, as there's a world where Brighton scored 2 or 3, but based on something being hard to break down and only conceded 10 away from home so far this season, I'm going to go with it's so tough. I just keep thinking with AFCON, how much will it actually affect Sunderland? And I don't think it will have that much of a dramatic effect, even though they've got a lot of players. But I think I'm going to go with a Brighton 2-1 win, you know. It's really tight, and I can fight an argument for any score here, whether it be draw, win Sunderland, or Brighton to win. But yeah, I think 2-1 Brighton feels right for this one. I'm going to go with my gut. Manchester City versus the Hammers West Ham, and Man City have strung another win streak of 5 together and do have a midweek home fixture in the cup against Brentford, although I expect this one tonight won't be too impactful once they probably rotate players, maybe bring some players on later in the match if need be. Look, they are breathing down Arsenal's neck still, being only 2 points behind them with superior goal difference, so just one Arsenal slip up required now. And then we look at West Ham at the other end of the table. They are in the relegation zone, 3 points behind Leeds with inferior goal difference, so it would entail this game week for them to win by 2 goals and Leeds to lose for them to overtake, unless Leeds get battered by Crystal Palace. But we'll come on to that one later on. Now, they've taken 9 points from the last 7 with some tricky fixtures in there, so it's not been too bad. And they do look better now, so long as Bone doesn't get a lengthy injury and Paqueta keeps his cool. Then my gut says, unfortunately, as a Leeds fan, they'll probably stay up, because that means they'll stay up over us. Now, they are losing their key fullbacks in wan-bissaka and Malik Doof, who have been some of their better players, especially in a system where Nuno really looks to utilise their wing-backs. So this one, of course, will be a step too far for West Ham. I think they'll concede 3, and I think they'll lack a little on the counter. I think, again, you know, having those wing-backs really does help how they do play with the system, especially on the counter, and being defensively solid. So I'm going to say that they're not going to score a goal even, and go 3-0 to Manchester City. Wolves versus Brentford, and Wolves will probably be a bit gutted actually not to have got anything at the Emirates after a 90th minute equaliser where they scored both goals for Arsenal. So who would have thought the only way Arsenal were going to beat Wolves at the Emirates was by own goals? Yep, Arsenal didn't score 1 goal, did they, in that game, technically. So, defensively, they look pretty good. However, they're now 14 points behind Leeds with a 16-goal difference swing. Now, Brentford didn't look good at home against Leeds and were fortunate to get away with the draw. Also, they're 18th in the away form table for this so far this season, with their only win coming against, at the time, a well and truly terrible West Ham. So, is there... So I'm just trying to think with Wolves, really, can they finally pick up some points for the first time in 10 games? And, you know, Wolves fans are probably grateful, actually, that Agbadu will be travelling for AFCON, and Brentford will, of course, be without Dango Atara, but Kevin Schade does return. I'm actually thinking, you know, I'm getting a gut feeling, I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. Yes, Wolves to pick up points. Wow, it feels like a miracle for do, doesn't it? Spurs versus Liverpool, and it looks like Thomas Frank's time might be running out after a dreadful performance at the City Ground, where their away form was the one thing keeping them afloat, really. And, you know, thankfully, I suppose, for them, the league is very inconsistent this season, so they're only 4 points off the top 5 spot, but can they get back to winning ways? What could be against a rejuvenated Liverpool side? I mean, Liverpool still don't look amazing, and, you know, there will be pleased to have gone 5 without defeat now in all competitions, but I must say that Brighton could actually have scored 2 or 3 against them at Anfield, so they still look shaky. I thought Salah looked okay, but he's gone to AFCON now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with him next month. It just feels like, disappointingly, that Frank's time is close to running out, so we'll go in favour of the away side and go with a narrow 2-1 win for Liverpool. Everton versus the Gunners, Arsenal, and Ndiaye Guy look as though they are leaving. I think they have actually already left for AFCON, whereas Arsenal have no players. So Everton seem to win a couple, then draw or lose one, then go on another couple wins. So it's probably good for them that they're having more wins and draws and losses for them. So yeah, could it be back-to-back defeats though here for the Toffees, which will be only for the second time this season. So as we know, Arsenal only just got over the line at home against Wolves, shockingly, so they will really need to put in some good performance again now, especially with Man City just behind them, and Villa too, can't forget Villa. And it will always be tough going to Everton, and they will be fortunate that they're playing Everton really without the players mentioned, which should help them, I'd imagine. So I feel like this will still be tight, and I'm going to go with a 2-1 win for the visitors Arsenal, mainly because of the players that Everton are missing. Leeds versus Crystal Palace, and Leeds have gone on a mini unbeaten run and were unlucky, as we established, not to take all 3 points at the G-Tech, where Leeds are obviously struggling in London. So whilst us Leeds fans are much happier with that now, he's been more pragmatic, he's actually been a little bit more proactive. He can still do a little bit better in that proactive side of things, because in that game against Brentford, they were there for the taking. Look, that second half, we came out with on it. We were really on it, and at that point we thought, can we go to a 4 at the back and push on and try really get, do something in that game, get a lead and have Brentford chasing. But no, they went and scored, and then he reacted once more rather than being proactive. So that's just that little bit more that we can get out of Farker, and then that will be amazing. Palace, on the other hand, are top of the away form table, where they've actually only conceded 5 on the road so far this season, so that's really impressive from 8 games away. Although, if we're being honest, they've had a nice first half of the season for away matches, with the Emirates and Villa Park being their toughest so far, so have to bear that in mind as well for the second half of the season. But you can only beat the teams in front of you, and they've done reasonably well so far in that aspect, haven't they? Now, they do have a European Conference game literally 48 hours before the match at Ellen Road. So by the time that match finishes, they'll have 46 hours to rest, prepare for Leeds, and travel to the hostile Ellen Road. So the thing is, here, as I was looking at the European Conference League's games that they've got, they're sitting 9th in the table. And yeah, they kind of do need to go all out for it, don't they, if they want to cement it, because it's so tight in that Conference League as well. So like 1 point between like 6th and 15th. It's pretty crazy, to be fair. It's really, really tight. So they are going to have to go all out in this one. So I don't think they can afford to rotate too much. I think for them, they want to be like 3-0 up at half time and then bring some players off. I think that will be their ideal scenario. From a Leeds fan, we want them to be losing, and then they have to make sure that the big boys all have to stay on or bring them on, depending on how Glasner depending on what team he puts out for that game. So it's a tricky one to predict, because we don't know how strong he's going to go then in that game, is he? So look, I'm really split here, because on paper you go Palace or draw, but that European game I think will be a big hindrance here, and have not looked too good after those ones anyway. So I'm going to go with Leeds United win. Plus Ismail Sarr is off to AFCON, so another player down. So I'm going to go 2 goals to Leeds and 1 to Palace. Villa versus Manchester United, and it's 9 wins in a row in all competition now for Emirates Villa, and that is some going and fair play after what was a really sluggish start. Find ourselves only 3 points off the league leaders, so dare to dream, Villa fans. I mean, we've got to put them in there, haven't we? We've got to put them in the conversation. And I've seen a stat from Sky Sports that they've got the most points since September, haven't they? It's like 27 points, I believe it is. It's something like that. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. So yeah, they've really turned it around. Villa Park is pretty much a fortress again, isn't it? And Man United had a bit of a stinker, didn't they, conceding 4 goals in their last match at home against Bournemouth. So Man United will be without Mbeumo and Diallo, so they are 2 key wide players. So another thing to factor in here, whereas Aston Villa haven't lost anybody. Now, Man United have only lost 1 of their last 10 matches though, but Villa Park will be rocking, and I can feel a relatively comfortable win coming here for the Villains. So I'm going to actually go with 2 goals to Villa, along with a clean sheet, making that, of course, 2-0 the final score to the Villains. And last but not least, and of course shockingly, It's not actually Man United here, but it is in fact Fulham versus Forest for the final game of the game week. So yeah, Fulham narrowly got over the line at Turf Moor with what was probably an undeserved win, in my eyes anyway. For me, Fulham can still get dragged into a relegation battle, especially because now they've got key players such as Iwobi, Bassett and Chukwueze travelling for AFCON. This is a big period for Fulham because in these next 3 weeks they could quite easily get dragged back into that bottom 4 or 5. So yeah, it only takes a couple of wins from Leeds and West Ham and Fulham to lose these to really, they might even be 17th, 18th at that point. So keep an eye out on that. Forest, on the other hand, had a brilliant win, didn't they, against Spurs, and Sangare was immense in that game too. But unfortunately for Forest, Sangare will be going to AFCON, so the good old reliable Yates will be coming in, I'm sure. But when you've got Anderson in midfield, I don't think it will impact them hugely. Of course, it's a big miss, but not greatly. So, yeah. So I do think here, given the AFCON situation, Fulham away, Newcastle as well in the Carabao Cup, I'm going to go with a Forest win. And so, yeah, they're going to take all 3 points, and I'm going to go with a narrow 1-0 Forest win. And that's the end of the video. So, yes, thank you again for watching. I was really tempted, as mentioned earlier, to put my other video out, but it was silent, so you'd have to try and lip read. I'm not sure if anyone would be capable of understanding what I say anyway, even whilst with sound. So yeah, please drop a like and subscribe, and until the next one, have a great week and weekend, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye for now.